How you doing out there? It's me, Tigger. I am Darkwing Duck. It's me, Bonkers, the Bobcat. All right, y'all, this is Ray, your favorite Firefly. It is I, Hondo Onaka. My name is Jim Cummings, and welcome to Toon'd. Sometimes, some grind. Do, 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 do. You thought you were watching the show for a second, didn't you?
Yeah, we sure did. Yeah, welcome to Toon'd, guys, with Jim Cummings here on the 4-Figure Discount Network. You may be wondering what the heck was going on there. Well, Jim, you were just getting the man himself singing the Chip 'n Dale theme song. We're here today to do a deep dive on Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers. I'm joined, of course, by producer Chris. How you doing, sir?
Hello, very excited for this one. Very excited.
Indeed. And as you're all well aware, we're also joined by the man who's been rescuing Rangers for more than 30 years. He is Jim Cummings. How are you, sir?
Hello, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Disney afternoon. Let's see, our second half hour, I think.
Yeah, because we just recorded a
Yeah.
episode of Cummings Commentaries, which is exclusive on our Patreon. So if you're not subscribing to us on Patreon yet, please do so. Support the show. You can go to patreon.com/Jim Cummings Podcast, and where you'll find the Cummings Commentaries, where we go back and Jim does watch-along commentaries of all the classic Disney animated shows like Tailspin and Bonkers and Darkwing Duck, and we just did the pilot of Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers as well. So if you like Chip 'n Dale, which of course you do because you're listening to this, and you love Jim Cummings and you love everything about the man, you can check out the commentary of the pilot episode available now on our Patreon channel. So subscribe and support the show. But as you can tell, I'm very, very excited for this. I'm just excited to get back into the swing of things. It's been a while since I've been sitting down doing a deep dive on one of your classic shows, because we love hearing you chat to all of your famous celebrity friends, but sometimes it's good to hear you talking about all the shows that we grew up and loved watching.
Oh, we do. I mean, I feel like I was growing up with them too when I was 30 years old, so...
Yeah, how old were you when
it's great.
You were about 30-ish, weren't you, when you started doing all these Disney shows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about right.
Yeah. Many kids growing up, our introduction to Chip 'n Dale as characters was Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, but they're really old Disney characters who many kids grew up with probably didn't have any idea. But did you have any memories of Chip 'n Dale before this show, or was it just fresh for you?
I did.
Yeah?
I did, yes, because they were in a lot of Disney shorts. And that was always, like, when I was a little kid, that was a treat. You went there, and there was a cartoon before the movie. Oh, you were in heaven. You know, and oftentimes it would be Chip 'n Dale, and sometimes it would be Goofy or Goofy and Pete doing something. And I used to get a real kick out of it. And it was interesting because they would show up in the Old West. They were Cowboy Chip 'n Dale, and they always had a foil in Pete, who was also me. Well, there you go, buddy. You know, that guy. It was just a kick. You know, whenever you saw Chip 'n Dale, you knew it was going to be fun, and they were going to go all over the place. And this is back when they were both naked. Yeah. They didn't have clothes on. They weren't dressed like Indiana Jones or a frat boy or anybody.
They still didn't wear pants in this show either.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
A lot of people were confused with the new movie, the Chip 'n Dale movie. They said, "Oh, you know, you had Jim back for Fat Cat. Why didn't you have him as the villain?" Well, you just explained it. Pete's the villain. That's why he was the villain in the film.
Yeah. Pete is the villain. I mean, he's he got turned into a softer villain, but still, you need a bad guy for the good guy to look heroic.
Yeah, he was he was the first villain, wasn't he, for Disney, Pete?
Oh, he very much so.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, where you think you're going there, pal? You know, and he was a bully.
Yeah.
You know, he threw his weight around because he had a lot of it.
When you were because you voiced him in the film too, right?
Uh-huh.
So when you voiced him in the film, did you have to take a different approach to when you voiced him for, say, Goof Troop? Because he's more of just like a lovable grump in Goof Troop, as opposed to a villain.
Yes. That was that was the challenge when we first started that. Because I was playing him like, you know, he wanted to get a hammer and pound these guys. You know, when he first came back for Goof Troop, because it was his character up to that point. I mean, he was a bad guy.
He was,
and so they had to turn him from an official villain into a grumpy, evil neighbor. You know, sort of just enough to create friction for Goofy and the gang, but not enough to, have him admitted.
Yes.
Not enough to call out the riot squad.
But we're here today. We're going to touch on the movie a little bit later, guys. Don't panic. We're here to talk about the TV series more in depth. So, first of all, when we say Chippendales Rescue Rangers, we just did a Cummings commentary, so it's fresh in your mind. But what are your first memories? What's the first thing that springs to your mind when you think about the show?
Boy. There was a lot of camaraderie, you know.
Yep.
We were all friends, and you know, Corey Burton, Tress McNeil, and the whole gang, Peter Cullen, you know, some of the incredibly most talented people you ever can believe. And we were all just sitting around in a room together, making these crazy characters and bringing them to life and having the time of our lives. And accidentally unknowingly creating this legacy that Disney Afternoon was one show after another. And they all added up to this great, great time period that, you know, it's the kind of thing that you don't really have a handle on while you're in the middle of it. But in retrospect, when you go, it's like I've said before, you go to the Comic-Con conventions and, you know, somebody will be dressed up as Chip and Dale or Monterey Jack or Fat Cat. And I love it. I love it. Because, you know, you do these things, and I've said before, you're in isolation. You're in a soundproof booth. You know, there's no audience reaction. There's no crowd appeal. There's no applause. You're just doing it and hoping it works. And, you know, so it's gratifying to know that all these years later, it's still working.
Yeah, 100%. And thanks to Disney Plus as well, it sort of just reignited everyone's love for the show. It's so easily accessible. But I feel like Disney have never really been able to recapture that sort of vibe and atmosphere as that Disney Afternoons era. And I don't think it ever will again, because just viewing habits are just so different now. We just watch what we want to watch when we want to watch it, where when these shows first aired, it was Disney putting out a new show, 4 o'clock, whatever, on the weekdays. Kids had to watch it because what else are you going to watch? The TV stations depicted what you watched. Now, because of streaming, we just watch what we want when we want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I miss those days because it was special, because it was, you know, I can remember running home to see this show or that show. I mean, it was like Mighty Mouse or Rocky and Bullwinkle. And, you know, and it was kind of cool because you'd go home and watch, like in Youngstown, we had this weird little show called 4 o'clock Showtime. Well, we'd go home and we had just enough time to watch that, then run off to football practice next door at the high school. And so we'd all run over there and we'd all have that story that we just saw fresh in our heads, and we'd all be talking about it. And it created a nice little community atmosphere, you know, a shared experience. And that's what these were.
Yeah, everyone watched the same thing at the same time because we had to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because we had to.
So you were saying at the time you didn't realize you were making this legacy, and that's understandable, but did you realize at the time you were making something that, you know, was such quality? Because it was still, at the end of the day, it was kids' shows. But, you know, did you realize you were making something that was so important to a lot of people out there?
Well, yes. Without taking yourself too importantly, I always said I don't take myself seriously, but I take the work seriously. And because I think I might have said this before. I remember one time, like, I'm a little raspy right now, so I'm glad I'm not recording. But, you know, I did a show and I had a cold when I first started doing Winnie the Pooh. And so when I heard it back, I went, oh my God, that's right, I had a head cold. But I went to work anyway, thinking I was being a real trooper. Whereas I should have told them, can we wait a couple of days so I don't sound like I'm stuffed up, like, you know, with a stuff my nose, and, you know, and I wish I did that. But it was only one show. So, you know, the point being that they live forever. Mm. And, you know, if you screwed up or if you did this, you know, and you're hoping people don't notice it, well, you got to hope they don't notice it forever. So do it right. Give a darn, you know, care. And so I do.
These characters, most of the time, they live forever, but they don't age either. Most of the time, they don't age.
Yeah. Well, they do.
Yes,
they don't age. Me, on the other hand, I haven't mastered that trick yet.
Exactly. But this show premiered. Right. This show premiered 7 months after New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, but it was announced about the same time in 1987. So it was about 2 years before the show actually went to air. When did you first hear about Chip and Dale?
Gosh, it would have been, you know, a few months before recording.
Okay.
You know, that's an easy one. I auditioned for. I don't even think I auditioned for Chip and Dale. But I auditioned for Fat Cat and Monterey Jack and Professor Nimnol. And there was a character in there named Wart. And I was him. And I was the pirate mouse who came in and out of a few shows.
Jolly Roger, I believe he was called. Yeah.
Yeah. There was and there were always a rotating cast of characters that came in and came out. Like Fat Cat would come in and he had his entourage, his gang. So that was a whole raft of characters in and of itself. And so it was really great. I mean, it was a golden era, I thought.
It really was.
It still is.
Yeah. When you hear about, say, for example, you're doing Winnie the Pooh and you hear about Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers is coming, you have to audition. Did they not hold meetings with the Disney cast first to sort of get a sense of, do you guys want to go for it first before we look elsewhere? Or was it just, no, Disney's putting the gig out, whether you're a cast member already or not, you've just got to line up like everybody else?
Oh, yeah. Well, there was nobody in that cast because they didn't cast it. But I mean, they don't think of you as a cast member just because you're in a show that they did.
Okay.
But you're welcome to audition right along with everybody else in the world.
It's funny because there's so many similar names, though, on those Disney afternoon shows where you sort of look back and you think there really was a core, don't you reckon, Chris? Like there was a core group of Disney actors.
Sure.
Like I'd call
absolutely.
I'd call it the Disney Afternoons cast, even though they're not officially called a cast. There were so many of the same names on the shows.
Oh, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, voice acting in general is just such a small circle, right, Jim? I mean, even to this day, it's such a, Hollywood itself is a small circle. And I'd say voice acting is even smaller than that.
Much smaller. Much. Yeah, because lots of on-camera actors, try to moonlight in do voiceover, and they don't do well.
A lot of them don't. Some of them do, but most of them don't. Yeah.
Oh yeah, most of them don't.
Yeah.
But I think it just comes from, if you're going to be curious, you have to have that in the voice somehow, or if you're mad, that's an easy one. But if you're kind of sad, you'd have to do. And I always think of it as music. Whenever like Eeyore, everything he says is in a minor key. Bo 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 bo. And if that was an oboe, it would be beep, 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 beep. Thanks for noticing me. And, you pay attention to that sort of thing and it informs it. And a lot of that technique or that aspect of it doesn't really kick in with everybody. But weirdos like myself are pretty good at it. So.
When do you think that era started where you call it TV guide casting? That's what you've called it before in the past. When do you think that truly started? For me, it feels like it was around about the Lion King, Toy Story kind of time.
Yeah. Well, a little before that even. Yeah, that's a phrase that my friend Jenny McSwain, who was she must have voice directed half the shows on the Disney Afternoon. And of course, Andrea Romano did the other half. So we were well taken care of in that regard. But she would say that, wow, they want me to cast blah, 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 fill in the blank. And it would be somebody that was on a hit TV show at that time. Yeah. And some people are really good. Like Rita Moreno did a few shows and she was really good. And Carol Channing did a few shows and she was really good.
Now, can I just interrupt here? You've got your Carol Channing story right from Chip 'n Dale. Did you know that there is video evidence of her appearance in the studio on that documentary on YouTube?
I did not. I know my friend Warren was trying to video her, and I don't know that he did.
Not the bit with her clothes off, but we'll get to the we'll touch on the story in a minute. But there is video of you bantering back and forth with Carol Channing in the studio for Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Yeah, on YouTube.
Oh, good. Yeah, and I think it was called Hello Doggy because she was in Hello Dolly on Broadway. Yeah. So Monterey Jack and she were going, and it was, and I think we were going down the river, and it was a takeoff on the African Queen. But it was named Hello Doggy, and I don't know why, but there you have it. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
And we've told the story before, but this is the Chip 'n Dale episode, so we'll tell the story again a little bit later in the show, because why not?
Sure. Yeah. That's right.
But yeah, that documentary, I'm going to pinch it and send it to you because it's great. It's like 22 minutes long, and it's just a lot of behind the scenes footage of you with your long flowing hair, looking all sexy as always.
Oh yeah, that's me.
But you can really capture the
Yeah.
vibe. Just the little snippets throughout the doco. You can just capture the vibe of the cast, and you can just tell that you're best friends. Like you, Tress, and Corey.
Yeah.
You're making jokes, and you're all just making each other laugh all the time, and it's great to watch.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm glad.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think I was wearing a cranberry shirt.
you were. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Can't remember what you had for breakfast, but you can remember what you were wearing that day.
Yes, that's right. Oh man,
But
good stuff.
our man Tad Stones, who we've mentioned him numerous times here on this pod. He also created Darkwing Duck, and he helped produce other shows like Aladdin, Gummy Bears, and I think Hercules as well, and the Buzz Lightyear animated show.
Yeah, very much so.
He was the brainchild behind this series here. However, as we mentioned in our Cummings commentary on our Patreon, it wasn't originally intended to feature Chip and Dale. He wanted it to feature the Rescuers, who had their own film already, but they were already producing the sequel. The Rescuers Down Under at the time, so that was sort of just, nope, they nipped that one out. They said, we can't do that one. We're already producing the sequel. He then suggested an original whole complete cast of new characters, and they'd be fronted by a main guy called Kit, who would wear what Chip would go on to wear, the Indiana Jones get-up. But Michael Eisner and Katzenberg were just like, we like the idea, but we need something for the kids to gravitate towards, like an established character. And they went through all the various characters, like Pluto and Tad mentions in the doco, Donald Duck was suggested, but then they settled on Chip and Dale. They thought, these guys are perfect. Let's move these guys in and make that happen. And you gotta agree, it's one of the best decisions that was made. The show was a success because of Chip and Dale being on the show, you'd have to think, wouldn't you?
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely. Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good call.
It's interesting to me, like the attention to detail that goes into this. And one of the things that stuck out to me while researching for this show, for this episode, was that Disney spent $28 million on this show. And like you said, it's a 65 episode show, which amounts to almost $500,000 per episode, which is wild to me for an 80s cartoon. I mean, that's a huge budget. And I think that's one of the reasons that the animation holds up so well.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight of what else would cost so much to produce each episode?
Jim's wage, of course.
Yeah, paying me. But, they had, people don't notice it, but if it goes away, it comes on like thunder. And that's the music, the background music. There's music throughout every scene, and all the sound effects are perfect. Whip, boom, 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 boom. And there's always something going on. There's always something, you can cover your eyes and still follow the show rather well, I think. And that's because of the attention to, attention to everything. And that came from Walt. He had a dictum that if you spend a little extra, if you go the extra mile, the people will always pay you back. And that permeated that philosophy permeated everything. And that's why, all these 20, 30 years later, we could sit here and have these conversations because it's still relevant.
It's sort of like the mentality of, if you can make it better, then why don't you? Don't half-ass it. If you can make it something better, do it. If you've got the funds to do so, spend it. And that's what he did.
Yeah. Oh, amen.
And I think that has to go too into the conversation we're having about such a small circle. I mean, from a business side of things, would you really want to risk new people coming in, or just go with what with, you and Tress MacNeille and so on and so on.
Proven.
Like they know that you exactly, you've proven yourself, and let's go with our safe bet here. We know that they have a wide range. We know that they can ask what we're asking. We know they can deliver what we're asking of them. Yeah. And we're investing a lot of money in this. So.
Yep, I agree.
And they get Tress and Corey to voice almost the entire gang. So they do Zipper and Gadget, as well as Chip and Dale. So they doubled up there. Now, would they have got double the wage, or is it one of those cases where you have to voice more than two to get more money? There was some sort of clause, wasn't there?
Yeah. Well, the first two are the same. If you do the blacksmith and the grocery store owner, you're covered. And the third one is 10% bump.
Okay. So you get paid twice, but the same amount, and then the third one is 10% extra. Is that what you're saying, or you get paid once for both characters?
No, you get paid. Let's say it's $1,000.
Yeah,
for the episode. Well, if they give you 3 characters, the first 2 are taken care of with your $1,000. But if you do a third one, Now they owe you $1,100, an extra 100, because you get a 10% bump.
That just seems not right to me. But,
Yeah, it should be a little better.
It should be if you're voicing 2 characters, you're getting 2 wages, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's when you have to wait. Like, there are different situations in which I kind of said, let's crack our knuckles here. Now let's stop and think about this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
did you ever put your foot down at any point and go, you realize how much money you're making from our work, right? Should we not be getting paid more?
Yeah,
Did you ever have to put your foot down? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't use my foot though, but yes, I put something down.
A few knuckle sandwiches.
And no, it was fine. It all came out in the wash.
Yeah. Well, you were touching before, Chris, about like the money they're pumping into this, $28 million. It just seems that Michael Eisner and Jeff Katzenberg they went all in on these Disney animated shows in the 80s. They had the Wuzzles and Gummy Bears, which were going okay, and then DuckTales just went boom and exploded, and they went, we've got to make something out of this. But like, did you get a sense at the time, Jim, that Disney really, really wanted these shows to succeed? Like, were they given off? Like, did you ever meet Michael and Jeffrey and talk about the shows, or were you just talking to Tad and people like that?
No, well, I met Jeffrey Katzenberg any number of times. He was a great guy, and it was a lot of fun. In fact, I'll just tell you this real briefly. When The Lion King came out, I was in my daughter Livia's bathroom. There was something wrong with the I was trying to unclog the sink because she just kept pouring all this hair into it. Mm-hmm. And so, the phone rings in the house. Remember when we had phones in the house?
Yeah.
And I said, honey, would you get that? Daddy's busy. And I'm fooling around with a wire hanger trying to get her hair out of the drain. And she's going, and I said, who is it, hon? She goes, I'm writing it down. So, okay, so Jeffrey and then Katzenberg, is it Katzenberg? And I said, are you talking to Jeffrey Katzenberg? Yes. He says yes. And I said, okay, you know what? I'll take the call. I'll take the call. I said, and I swear if I'm lying, I'm dying. And if he was here, he'd tell you. The first thing I said was, how many times have I told you it's Saturday? I don't work on Saturday. Remember, it's the weekend. And he laughed like hell, to his credit. He didn't fire me. Yeah, but anyway, he was calling me to congratulate me on the great work in Lion King.
Wow.
And I mean, and if you think, well, gee, all you did was laugh. First of all, I was the gopher from the underground. Well, don't worry about it. All's well in the underground, sire.
Were you the gopher? I did not know that.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, that was me.
Wow.
And of course I was Ed.
Yeah.
But a quick aside. Well, too late for a quick one. But they didn't tell him that I sang "Be Prepared."
Oh.
Because they were worried. They were, they said, well, Jeremy's a great actor, but he's not a singer, And he said, no, it's going to be fine. So he went in and did his part, and he does all the talking, but he never even says "Be prepared." And so I went in and basically sang over top of it. I just sang the whole song, the whole thing. Then they do their magic with the mixing board.
Yeah.
And
because he lost his voice or something, didn't he? Didn't they say he lost his voice or something?
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah.
Oh,
no,
okay,
it's fine.
There we go.
And no, that's the problem. He didn't lose his voice.
Really?
Anyway, so but they called him up and they told me, Rob and Don. They go, well, so what do you think? Oh man, I think it's great. Greatest song in a movie. Are you kidding? I love it. And you guys, why were you so worried? See, I told you. I knew the guy could swing it. He's like this classically trained, London theater actor. I mean, oh my gosh, I knew he was going to be amazing. And he goes, yeah, well, so you like the song? I mean, it's good. It's awesome. It's perfect. He goes, it's also Jim. And they go, what? It's who? Cummings? And they go, yeah. And he goes, no. And then he plays it again. He goes, wow. And they go, it's too late. You already like it. and he says, yeah, I do. So, okay. So that was my story. Yeah.
Well, there we have it. It's officially out there. We now know it's all settled. Because there's so many debates online of people saying, Jim didn't sing it. He only sang the end of it. And Jeremy Irons lost his voice. He sang the first half. And
he lost his voice. Yeah, he lost his voice. Yeah, well, I hope he found it.
Are you credited on the album as singing that song?
Well, that's a good question because, there is that interlude where Whoopi and Cheech and Ed, who, I was Ed.
Oh, of course.
They're there and they're having this little brouhaha in the middle. But where do we feature? Just listen to teacher. And they go back and forth and Cheech and Whoopi and Ed are there and they're arguing. Well, I'm credited in there. But if you look back and you watch the song, so to speak, Ed doesn't say anything.
I didn't think he did. He doesn't laugh at all, does he? No.
He doesn't. I mean, he only laughed anyway, but he doesn't even do that.
No.
So it's like Ed was in the scene, so okay, that we can say that Jim was there, but we don't have to say that he finished the whole,
So did they come to you and say, look, we're going to give you credit, but we're crediting you as Ed? Did they tell you that, or was that just something you've just assumed?
No,
Okay.
No, they just scooted it in there, I think. They're just, just skated, whatever you want to say.
You have no idea. Like, this is like a huge Disney story. Like, this is one of the things that people talk about forever. Like, it's still to this day, people debate who's saying Be Prepared. Well, now we know, Chris.
Yeah. And at every single convention, they go, well, I heard that Jeremy Irons blew his voice out. And you've heard that, right, Chris? He blew his voice out, and you had to finish the ending of it and blah, blah, blah.
That's the story that Disney have gone with, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And
I've even heard people try and correct you, Jim.
Yeah. No, that wasn't you. I
was there. I was there.
Yeah, I was. Scar sang that song, and you weren't Scar.
I think you'll find, Jim, if you read the Wikipedia page.
Yes. Yeah, that you weren't there. Yeah, Wikipedia has nothing correct except BS. But anyway.
Well, there we go.
That was true stories. Didn't mean to get us off. I forget what we were talking about.
Speaking of the Wikipedia page, I was just perusing through the one on Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and something stood out to me. There was a character named Arnold Mousenegger, and he was played by a voice actor named Brian Cummings.
Yes.
Is there any relation there?
No, No, he's a great guy. He's an old buddy of mine. He was in the business. He's a little older than myself. He was in the business before me, and then I showed up, and they go, "Oh, you must be Brian's brother." And I go, "No, not really. Sorry, but he's a great guy. He's well retired. I think he lives in Provo, Utah. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, Salt Lake, somewhere like that."
So you've got phone calls from Jeffrey Katzenberg. That's where we got the onto the story there about Scar and everything. So were Michael and Jeffrey, were they very hands-on at all? Did you ever see them around the studios? Because it seemed like they were more hands-on than the captains of the ship these days anyway.
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey sure was. Yeah, he definitely was. I mean, he called me on the phone on a Saturday, for crying out loud. And I would see him on and off on the lot, and he was a friendly guy. He was a nice guy.
He was the man who, a Goofy movie, that was like his pet project because it was about him and his daughter. Essentially, that whole story of going on the car trip. And Disney, for some reason, just did not want that film to go. They didn't market it. They didn't believe in the film. Yeah, and that's what led him to go off and do DreamWorks. Yeah, because he ended up becoming the CEO of DreamWorks along with Spielberg. Spielberg
I didn't even know that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and that was a good movie too.
Oh, yeah. I love Goof Movie. And we're going to be doing a Goof Troop episode coming up. We're going to be doing a Goof Troop commentary for Patreon. And we'll definitely do an episode specifically on a Goofy movie as well, because that's one of those movies, one of my favorite Disney movies growing up. Have you seen a Goofy movie, Chris?
Likewise.
I love it.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite, definitely.
Yeah, I think, and it's one that's starting to get more acclaim now. At the time, you rarely heard people talking about a Goofy movie, but now I think everyone who grew up with the movie is now going, hey, everybody's like giving that movie some credit because it's awesome. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay that it wasn't, Roger Rabbit or whatever. So what? It was a great movie.
Speaking of, we touched on this in the commentary we did for Patreon of, what was it called? Categories Not Included, the pilot episode of Chip and Dale.
Yes.
We touched on this, but let's go more in depth. So we're just touching then on the controversy with you and Jeremy Irons with the Scar voice. So Peter Cullen was the voice of Monterey Jack, right? In the beginning of this show.
Yes, he was.
And then halfway through season 2, you were the voice and for season 3, right? And you've said, I don't know why.
Inexplicably.
So
yeah.
Did you just rock up to work one day? You say that you didn't know why. So did you just turn up to work one day and they went, "You're Monterey now"? What happened?
Well, my agent told me first, but yes.
Okay.
And they said, "Oh, and they're going to want you to read Monterey Jack." And I go, "Well, I already auditioned for that. They got Peter Cullen." They go, "Yeah, well, now they're switching," and we're like halfway through. And I was thinking, why? Why would you do? Peter has like 32, 33. And then I did the next 32 or 33. And if you play them back to back, I mean, I can tell, Peter can tell, anybody can probably tell who's who. But I don't think that it was that significant a difference to warrant, benching him, and having me there. I mean, especially since we were all both still pretty much on the show anyway, with or without Monterey Jack. And when you play mine and his together, they're not worlds apart. But they said they maintain there's focus groups, who I guess ruled the world. But they simply said that I was more understandable. My Australian accent was more understandable.
When things like that happen, does it create any animosity or awkwardness between you and the other voice actors?
Yeah, well, that's what I was worried about because Peter's a great guy, and I mean, and I knew him anyway.
You were doing Eeyore on Winnie the Pooh at the same time.
Yeah, he was Eeyore, and and also Optimus Prime, and I've worked with Peter in dozens of things, and it just and I told him, I said, okay, this is as awkward as it could possibly be. Let's, we're going to both sit next to each other. And then, last week you were Monterey Jack. This week I'm Monterey Jack. And it's the same character. It doesn't sound all that much different, mate. And
can I just say, from an Australian's perspective, I watch it, and I mean, no offense to Peter, but yours does sound much more Australian than Peter's does.
Oh,
it's just the little words here and there where I'm thinking that's not how we say that. We pronounce that word where you pronounced it correctly. Little things.
Oh, wow. I'll take that. Well, maybe somebody else noticed that, like the casting directors.
But yeah, so you were saying though you were discussing with him. So take us back to that first sort of conversation you guys had where you're going, okay, well, I'm now you.
Yeah, well, he's such a stone cold pro. And he did tons of on camera. I mean, he was on the Carol Burnett show on camera. He was one of the cast of. So, I mean, the point is he's been around. He knows, he knows the ins and outs. And he says, don't worry about it. Just, the point is we're all still working. You got a job. I got a job. It's, don't worry about it. That is showbiz. And I said, wow, okay. Yeah. And he's only right.
Yeah.
So
have you ever discussed it since? It was just a case of we discussed it. That's it. Move on. Don't bring it up anymore.
No, really. No, there wasn't anything to discuss.
And there was no sense of awkwardness going forward.
No. He's a great guy.
It does seem weird though that that you auditioned for the role, you didn't get it, and they went, the guy we gave it to, no good. We should have given it to the other guy.
Yeah. I have no idea. Maybe he pissed off somebody.
Maybe. This might be wrong,
possible.
But it also would have been cheaper for them too, wouldn't it? Because then he would have just been like a third voice for you as opposed to a main voice, or would that not have changed things at all when it came to his wage?
Well, I mean, if he's still on the show, he's still there.
Because he voiced the two cops or whatever, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all voiced tons of people throughout the I mean, he was the apple seller in one, and I was the milkman in another, and that type of thing.
Did they used to just cast you guys in those roles because it was just easy? It's like, Jim and Peter, they're here. Just get rather than have auditions and have someone try to get the roles. Just get Jim to do it.
Well, sure. Well, when you're casting originally, like Ginny McSwain or Andrea Romano would have been, they've got people in their minds. You audition for this role, that one, this one, that one, and you either get it or you don't. But they still know. I mean, maybe you got one character that you were hoping to get. You auditioned for 4. Well, maybe you won't be doing the other 3, but there will be a milkman, there'll be a dog catcher, or there'll be a bad guy or a good guy or somebody. that's walking down the street and they need, somebody to go, look in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. Somebody has to say, and we're there and we all do multiple characters.
Yeah.
So they knew what they were doing.
Who decides? Who's the final decision when it comes to who gets the role? Because you just mentioned the voice directors there, Jenny and Andrea.
Yeah.
Did they have a say? But who was the one who decided?
Yeah. Well, if usually the voice director was also the casting director.
Okay.
They cast the series. They know this person, that person, this person, that person. They call them in. Hey, I'd like to see you read for Buttercup or fill in the blank. Pine cone lips. And they know what you can do. So, the casting director is usually the voice director anyway. So they're kind of doing their homework in advance just by casting. And I've gotten roles that I didn't audition for, but they heard something and they go, oh, well, that's okay. He's not going to get that. Let's use him on the bull in the 3rd episode or whatever, because that sounds like. And so, that's just how it goes.
Tell the listeners, because those two names aren't that, famous per se, right? But Jenny McSwain and Andrea Romano, how important were those two ladies to the Disney Afternoon franchise?
Oh, well, between them, they were the Disney Afternoon franchise. They literally directed each and every show.
Yep.
Of Darkwing, there was Ginny, and Andrea did all of the tailspins, I think. And they would just go back and forth, on, I'd start naming all the shows, but if I forget one, I'd feel bad.
Yeah.
So
directing the animated, directing that era of animation was a whole different beast to, say, directing a film. It's just the energy. You watch, we put the video up on the Toon'd YouTube channel, which you can find, of the Darkwing Duck session. And Jenny's just energy. It must have just been exhausting.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, well, they're both they were both amazing and both, very gifted at what they did.
Do they have their own sort of unique way to bring the best out of you, Jenny, or they're just very similar?
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, Jenny would say, okay, do it right or I'm going to club you like a baby seal. So that was, and then Andrea was right. She goes, okay, now how about doing it in some sort of a voice that I can actually understand? Oh, okay. Because, the voice would get too convoluted or whatever, So they had their own each best way to cajole a good voice out of you and a good good acting.
Yeah.
Because it's like Jess Arnell says, when it comes to being a voice actor, it's a small V, but it's a capital A.
I have a question just relating to voice direction. I was curious watching the show, of course they sped up the voices for the characters, so in the recording booth, would the lines have to be delivered slowly in order to make up for that speed correction?
Yes. When we did the read through and even the recording, Corey Burton and Tress were there and they were doing their characters just kind of live, like, Monterey, look out there, Chippy, look out, strike me stack is whatever I would say. And then, look out, Dale, it's going to be risky, and she would do that and Corey would do that. And then the show was over. It was all recorded and they had to stay after school. And then they did those lines like this. And then they would speed them up, but then they did those lines like this. And it would turn into Chip and Dale.
Interesting.
So, they had to do them separately because they had to be recorded at a different speed.
Yeah.
And then played back at normal speed, and all of a sudden the characters pop out.
And so they would do that in the original voice, the original tempo, just to give the other voice actors a feeling of the script and the pacing and everything. Okay.
Absolutely.
Double the work. Wow. There's actually footage of Corey and Tress doing it slowly on that documentary. They're talking like this, and then they play the actual clip from the episode, and they're talking in real time.
Yes.
That must have been
it was
really
cool.
Challenging.
I would think so. I was glad to not be a chipmunk in that show. I was happy to being all the bad guys.
You said you didn't audition. You didn't audition for them, though, did you?
I don't know. I feel like I probably did.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
That makes me think of something else too. So for the movie, was that the same process? Because obviously the show was done 30 years ago, the technology, but with pitch correction and everything, all the technology we have now, did they still have to do it in that slow cadence?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
I think they spoke more normal voice though in the film, didn't they? They weren't really high pitched. It was just sort of Sandberg and...
Yeah, that was a different... I think only one of them was sped up, wasn't it?
Yeah,
was a chipmunk voice. The other one, I think it was just some guy.
I know that because Andy Samberg did one of them. Who did the other? I'll just look up John Mulaney, of course. Yeah, he did the voice of Chip. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But Tress did voice Gadget in the film. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. But it's kind of like the Mario deal, where it was Mario, but it was Pratt's voice.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, his version of Mario. So it wasn't the Alvin and the Chipmunk style, like Chip and Dale version of the high pitch. It was more normal voices, which, as you were saying, like people going into like the Mario movie, they were just sort of hanging it on Chris Pratt. This isn't going to work. But as you were saying, Chris, when you're watching the movie, you're not really paying attention to it, are you?
Yeah, no, I didn't think he did a bad job at all. I really enjoyed Jack Black as Bowser. I thought that movie was fine.
Did they approach you, Jim, about Eric Bana voicing Monterey Jack? Because I can understand why they went for an Australian to voice an Australian character. You are Monterey Jack, as is Peter, but did they approach you at all? Is it just a case of, we need you to voice these ones? Kind of like the Christopher Robin film.
Gosh,
we need you to voice Winnie, but not Tigger.
I don't remember. I don't think so. I don't think it was up for grabs. I think, because they've got their whole cast list over there. It's not like I'm going and picking, so no, I don't think, I don't recall as them bringing it up.
It feels like, in the early 90s with these animated shows or whatever, it was the characters were the stars.
Yeah.
You had a modern animation. It's the name is the star now. It's not necessarily the character. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, it's, speaking of Ginny McSwain, she would call it TV guide casting.
Yeah, yeah.
If a guy looked like the character, they would use him, to do, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess, who does Jack Black look like? Well, he looks like this character, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know about that. I get it though. I mean, they're trying to put butts in seats.
I was just going to say, just on that point, I'm so curious, like the one major one that really bothers me is Vin Diesel as Groot. Like, who is going to see those movies for Vin Diesel as Groot?
To say those 3 syllables.
Yeah, like, do those names really pull people in like that? I don't know the numbers, but I don't know anybody who goes to see specifically for those actors in voice roles.
Yeah, especially that one. That could have been anybody.
And you could have broken out a career with that one. That's my little mini rant. Like, to me, you could have introduced like a whole new voice actor. You could have given somebody a shot, and then they can do conventions, they can have a career. But no, you need to give the guy with multi-millions and a whole franchise already.
Yeah. I agree. It was like, that was somebody was, stargazing.
Mm-hmm.
There's
at least the Chip and Dale movie brought in voice actors though. Yeah, it brought in Tress to play Gadget, and you voiced Fat Cat, and you did Shredder's arm, I believe, in that film.
Was I Shredder too?
Apparently Shredder's arm. Apparently one of Shredder's arms or something. I know it says you got a credit as Shredder's arm.
I'm so proud.
Yeah,
you'd think I'd have remembered that.
You also voiced Darkwing Duck in that film as well.
Oh yeah, that I am proud of.
Yes, so at least they were really willing to sort of bring in the original in that regard.
Yes. Well, yeah, they kind of better. People, there was sort of mini rumor that somebody was coming around and Darkwing Duck was coming around, but it wasn't going to be me. And people at conventions were on fire. They go, is that true? Is that true? Because we're not watching. There is no, I am not going to. And I go, no, I hope that isn't true. That's 2 of us that won't be watching if that's, But so far, so good.
With like Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, though, so you also voice many other characters, like Fat Cat, for example. We touched on it in the commentary. Fat Cat, inspiration for the character. Let's go into it. Who did you look to for the voice, and you know exactly who they went to for the design as well.
Oh yes. Well, it went over, and it was Zero Mostel. from the producers. Before we were so crudely interrupted. Yeah, it was his character, and he even has the same hairdo.
That amazing comb over.
Yeah, that amazing comb over is right. And he was those Chippendale Rescue Rangers, and he just had that sort of blustery, theatrical, yes, my dear boy, and he just, he was the king of condescension. And I just love doing that character. It was one of my favorites of that entire series. There's no doubt. Yeah. But I'm glad that he's still out there and people kind of still dig him. I just had a new compilation of pictures and characters, and they go, "Oh, good, you have Fat Cat on there." And I thought, "Oh, good. Well, glad you noticed."
I'm not sure. Did we touch on Bruce Talkington in this podcast, or was that in the commentaries? We've done it back to back. Have we touched on Professor in this episode here already?
I don't think in this.
I don't think we have. Yeah. No, because so Bruce Talkington, he was a writer for the show, and he looked like a Disney villain. He looked like a cartoon character. God bless him, you know what I mean? Like he looked, he just had the look. And the animators said that they'd love to draw this man. They thought, well, let's just draw him into the show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. It's just like what they did with Pinky and the Brain. That came from caricatures of two animators and writers at Warner Brothers. And Bruce Talkington was I first met him when we were doing New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And he was a gifted writer, and he wrote a book.
Did he write on there?
I've got a book around here that he wrote.
Did he really?
I don't know. Yeah, and it was a Winnie the Pooh book, and it was for a kid. It was a read along, and he was just a sweetheart of a guy, and he's been gone for years and years now. But I met him, and next thing you know, we're getting ready to do a show, and they come out and they go, "Okay, we want you to come up with a crazy mad scientist voice for this guy." And I go, "Wow, it looks like Bruce." And they go, "Uh-huh." Yep, sure does.
Well, we achieved what we wanted to then.
Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, mission accomplished. It was kind of cool.
How did they pitch that character to you? He was pitched as more of just like a take over the world villain compared to a Fat Cat. How would you describe the comparison between Fat Cat and Professor Nimnu?
Well, one was, a mad professor bent on world domination, Nimno. And Fat Cat was a smooth criminal. He had Gangsta. Everything you couldn't rile him up. He was just Mr. Smooth, and he had his henchmen, and he would send them out, and they would do the deed and bring back the goods, and he was a schmoove operator.
Now, Chris, we asked on Jim's personal actual Twitter and Instagram for some questions for Chippendale Rescue Rangers, and of course, they've just absolutely bombarded us with questions. So I think what we should do, do you want to touch on a few here, and maybe we'll do like a Q&A mailbag just for Chippendale later down the track, and we'll save some of the questions because there's so many. I think we can get through them all. What do you guys think?
Sounds good.
Agreed.
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right, Chris, will you take us off with a question from Instagram?
Let's just go with this one. It has the most likes first.
What's your favorite episode?
No, okay. No.
How much fun was it to say cheese each time?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. And it was kind of one of those little signature moments. And I can't believe you asked me this. This is great. I remember at that time going to, it was kind of like a county fair, over in Agoura, California, and my two older girls were much younger then, and we're in line and we're trying to get some hot dogs or something, and the lady, we're about 3 or 4 back, and there's 2 little boys there, and they're like 10 years old, and the lady says, "Okay, boys, you want a hot dog? Yeah. Would you like some chili on it? Yeah. And would you like some cheese?" And they look at each other and go, "Cheese." And they were imitating me. And I looked at my family and we're all just sitting there going, "Wow." And it was really cool. I mean, it was kind of goosebumpy. But so yeah, it was fun.
Did they sound right?
Yes, they did. They sounded perfect. Oh God.
Right, this one here. Oh, this is an interesting one. Probably one you can't really answer off the top of your head, though, but it's from Molly Baker. She says, if you could write an episode of Chippendale, what would you like to see happen in an episode that didn't already happen in the original run?
Oh, geez.
If you were doing a Monterey Jack episode, what would you like? Well, did they ever go to Australia, Chippendale?
I don't think so, but that's not bad.
That'd be an interesting spin.
Yeah. Well, they did one. There was a takeoff on Hello Dolly, Hello Doggy, with Carol Channing. So that was fun. So, gosh, I don't know. Maybe a parody of Casablanca or something. Monty goes and he's Humphrey Bogart.
That's what was great about those Disney shows was they would take off these things from pop culture. The kids had no idea what they were referencing, but as you get older, you go, "Oh wow, that's great!" You know?
Yes, very true.
Yeah, very true.
That's why it's so fun to rewatch all these old cartoons. It's like you start to pick up on references that you never got, and I love finding those little Easter eggs.
Oh yeah.
The Simpsons was key for that. You watch it now as an adult, and you go, "Whoa!" There were so many jokes I had no idea about when I was a kid.
Oh yeah. I love that. That's good writing.
I've got a question here. The person's asked, what are some of your favorite songs that you sang in the series? Because Fat Cat has some songs. And obviously you are a talented musician and you love singing. And I think when they make these shows, they know, oh wait, Jim can sing. So do you think, what are some of your favorite songs that Fat Cat sang, for example? I think you had Fat Cat Stomp was one of them. And
I can't remember any of them.
You can't remember them? Wow.
I can't remember them. It was a while ago. And it's not like he was a singer. I mean, I don't remember singing one. I'm sure I did.
Yeah, there's video. I watched one the other day in the research for this. It was in the pilot episode, that 5-episode pilot that actually got made later in the track, but that was turned into the syndication pilot. But it was like a song in the pilot. I'm trying to find it here. Whilst we're what was it called?
It wasn't
the
a
best
standard
of it. It was
song.
called the Best of Everything. Best of Everything it was called is a song featured in the Chippendale Rescue Rangers pilot episode, the 5-part pilot, to the rescue, sung by one Fat Cat, aka Jim Cummings.
Oh wow!
So maybe
listeners,
Jim can go back and watch that, and in another episode he'll sing it for you.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah.
You want to hear it?
Sure.
Yeah, let's play it. Let's do it.
And cream by any other name cannot compare with French champagne. So pop the cork and tip your hat.
Is that ringing any bells?
To me,
Yeah.
Fat Cat. I want the best of everything.
Oh, that's great. He got a cool samba.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, now I remember it.
So you remember it? Yeah,
I couldn't remember the words, but I remember that tune. The best of everything. That's cool. Wow.
Do you think because they knew that you could sing, they wrote these songs into the script, or was that something that you would request? Go, look, like I can sing. Let's work because as you've said in the past, kids respond to music.
Oh boy, they really, really do. There's no doubt about it. I like singing anyway, but everybody knew that I sang, so it was cool. Anytime there was, any singing to be done, well, let's get Jim.
I think we need to have like a Jim Cummings compilation on playlist on YouTube where we film you singing all these classic songs that we all grew up listening to.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's on Spotify, isn't it, Christopher? Your mom was looking.
Yeah, on Spotify. On your Spotify account?
Yeah, my Spotify account. Yeah, there's a few songs there.
One would say Be Prepared might be on there.
one would think that, and a whole mess of Motown songs come from the California Raisins days, way back.
Yeah. It's funny though that you would put the Jim Cummings song in your playlist because you're not credited for Be Prepared.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm in the credit, remember?
Oh yes, of course. Yes, as Ed. The one who doesn't appear.
Whoopi.
Yes.
Yeah, he sir, not appearing in this film. But yeah, and there's my California Raisin, by the way, standing right there.
Where is it? Oh, yeah, there it is.
The purple guy.
Can see it. Purple guy up there,
That's
indeed.
him right there. Mm-hmm. His name was AC. I don't know what that stood for. But
air conditioner.
Always cool.
All right, Chris, hit us with another question.
All right, here we go. This one is from Brian Weller Arts. What was your inspiration on finding the voices for Monterey Jack and Fat Cat and the Professor?
Well, that was easy. Monterey Jack was basically an Aussie who liked cheese, and he was a big blustery guy. And Fat Cat was Zero Mostel. Zero Mostel. And from the producers, if that helps, with Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman. Oh God,
Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder. Yeah, sorry, Gene. And what was the third one?
The Professor.
Oh, the Professor Nimno. Well, he looked just like Bruce Talkington. And I can remember when I was a kid, there was a mad professor who was on some show, and it might have been Mighty Mouse. And so I always say if you do a terrible impression of somebody that they don't know who it is, it's a new character. So I did that. And that was Professor Nimno.
Professor, yeah. But we touched on this in the commentary as well. So what was the idea for adding the lisp to his character? What was the importance of the lisp? What did it bring to his voice?
Well, I just thought it made him sound a little discombobulated, or, it just was a little color, a little something to hang my hat on. And, every now and then he might have said something funny that rubbed somebody the wrong way, and, this and that. And that's not to be insensitive to anybody, but it's, back then the PC police were not circling the airwaves like they are now. So who knows?
Because you don't really hear characters with lisps anymore, but lisp was a big part of many animated characters like Daffy Duck and Donald. And Sylvester. So many iconic characters had that lisp. Was that sort of just like a staple of a particular type of character?
I don't think so. I think it was just, no, it wasn't a staple. It was just if it fit the character and it enhanced the character. If it was like a little calling card.
Yeah.
What could I say?
Well, speaking of bad impersonations, let's touch on Sergeant Spinelli.
I think it was Lieutenant, but yeah.
Lieutenant Spinelli.
Yes. Thank you. Don't demote me.
I know, you blame the Disney Wiki.
Lieutenant Spinelli, he was a very nice guy. But, he wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer.
And the fact is, he was, God rest her soul, my Aunt Grace.
She talked like this. How you doing there, Jimbo? Get over here, give somebody a hug, would you?
And I just thought that was the coolest voice as a kid. And it was my auntie, and so I've got her in obviously a lot of cartoons, and my Uncle Sam was too. God rest his soul. And he was a guy. He would play a lot of bad guys. And he played a dragon in, I think, a couple of Bible stories or whatever
was that a bit of Lucky Patel in there as well?
Well, Lucky, oh God, now you said Patel.
Patel, yes, Patel, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking he's not from India, Patel. Yeah, he was called Pickle. But no, he was more of just a log stuff. Oh, come on, bonkers. Come on, get down. No, I'm not going to hug you. All right, come on, get your hug. And he was just kind of like me being disgruntled.
Yeah.
But Fat Cat and the others, they held their own handle.
How did they pitch Wart to you? Because he always came across like the intelligent baddie in the show. He was always smarter than everybody else. Was that how he was pitched to you?
I don't know that he was all that smart, but he looked like and so I just did a bad Peter Lorre.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I understand, but yes, Fat Cat, whatever you say.
And so that was kind of like where he wound up.
All right, I got another one here. This means podcast is the username. If Monty could cross over with any other character you voice, who would you like to see him pair up with? Have a great show.
If Monterey Jack.
If he could cross over with any other character that you voiced, who would you like to see him pair up with?
Maybe Darkwing.
Yeah?
Yeah, and he could pinch hit for when Launchpad is under the weather.
What would some banter between Monterey Jack and Darkwing Duck sound like?
All right, Monterey, it's time to go to the local cheese shop. It's under duress. They're stealing it left and right. Well, we got to get right over there now, mate. Did you say cheese?
And then he would save the day. If there's cheese involved, he will not brook any transgressions against Lord Cheese. His muse.
It's funny though, because when you do these voices here on the pod, you've said previously how you become the character, and you do, like, you just became Monterey.
Yeah.
And when you were Darkwing, you were, You got the pose going. Yeah, you've got to have that. You sort of turn your head a little bit. And
yeah, the first time I noticed that was when ABC we were doing the very, very, very first New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And they had me in the studio and I was doing Pooh. And they had a camera sort of behind me. And I was standing there and my shoulders were kind of slumped and I let my stomach pop out a little bit. And then, I was Winnie the Pooh. But then when I was Tigger, I was standing up straight and I had my hands on my hips and I was ready to bounce at a moment's notice. And I noticed that my whole body language was different. And I could tell which character I was doing, even if the sound was off. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
This one here's from @Nippondering. He says, "Loved staying at the Chippendale campground at Disney World as a kid, but I remember thinking that we needed more Monterey Jack down there. Justice for Jack." These Disney animated, like the afternoon characters, were a huge part of the theme parks in the early 90s, weren't they?
Oh yeah, they really were. There was a show called Plane Crazy, PLA.
Yeah, Plane Crazy, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was quite something. Don Carnage was in it, and Baloo. And interestingly enough, I've taken over. Now I'm Baloo.
Yeah.
So whenever you hear Baloo from now on, not back in the day, obviously, but it was Phil Harris and then Ed Gilbert, and now it's me.
You did it for the Disney 100, I believe?
Yes, it was.
But it was just interesting because you go back and you look at old photos of the old theme parks, and like Don Carnage and Monterey Jack, they had like the big mascot outfits. Like, I wonder what's happened to those mascots. They must still have them somewhere. Surely you wouldn't just throw those out. And you think with Disney Plus being a thing now, why not parade them around? Surely fans, like the kids who grew up in the 90s, are now the adults bringing their kids. Surely they would love to be a part of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've had Darkwing out and about in recent years.
Really? I didn't know
just
that.
walking around. Yeah. And the last time we were there, whenever that was, it's funny because I don't get recognized walking around, but at Disneyland, everybody knows who I am.
Really?
So they dragged me over there, and Pooh, and I'm taking pictures with Pooh and Tigger outside of the Winnie the Pooh ride. So that's kind of rewarding.
So you're saying the fans recognize you or the staff recognize you?
Well, the staff, and one of them actually said something. The guy in the Pooh costume. It's absolutely forbidden. You'll get fired. So hopefully I won't. They won't know which person did this because I don't know his name. But I went up and they do certain things with pantomime, like and they do this and they go and they're hugging, and that's their way of saying, oh, I'm really glad to see you. I'm really happy to see you, and then and I said, how you doing in there? I was just he and I right there, and the guy in the Pooh costume, and he goes, I'm so happy to meet you. I don't know what to do with myself. And I went, oh, okay.
Stop talking.
Yeah. Stop talking. They might hear you. I know. But it was very sweet. It was one of those things,
You've made a few people cry, right, in the costumes?
Yes, I have. I don't mean to make them cry, but...
That's because you punched them in the bellies, right?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. The old Three Stooges poke.
What are some of your favorite Disneyland memories? Did you go when you were, how old were you when you first went to Disneyland?
I was probably, 28, 30 years old.
So you're almost working for Disney by that point.
Yeah.
Well, you did Dumbo Circus by that point, I'm assuming then, yeah?
No, it was about 2 or 3 years away. But then, I could remember going with, my eldest daughter, and, I had to save up for like 4 or 5 weeks to get the tickets.
You didn't get free entry. But you weren't working for them, of course.
No, they didn't. Yeah. They couldn't have cared less. They know who I am, and they're not crazy about giving them out. But no, it was that was the first time I went, and and I had this big 50-pound video camera, taking it around with the big VHS tapes.
Do you still have that video?
I do, yes. But
that
it's
would be a video
DVD
out there somewhere, like Jim Cummings' first Disneyland trip. That'd be a cool thing to watch.
Yeah. Well, you know what I do have is I have most of the last Gummy Bear recording session on DVD.
We need to get that out there.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, and I was thinking of a way to do it. I was talking with Katie Lee, my buddy, and she she was Sunny Gummy, and also Dumbo and Dumbo Circus, and we've worked together a million times. And I told her about it. She goes, "Oh my God, I'd love to see that." So yeah, I think we'll have to think of something to do.
Do you have many sort of home videos of being in the studio or Disneyland and things like that? Do you have much of those?
Well, that was one. Yeah, that was a home video.
Yeah. Do you have many more, or is that sort of just like just a couple?
No, not many.
Were you allowed to film in the studio, or was it sort of something you had to request?
Back then, not everybody had those.
Yeah.
And you certainly couldn't do it on the phone that you didn't have yet for another 15 years. Even the first phones that did come out were crappy. Of course, now they're like, movies. But no, there was no, they didn't worry about it because who the heck was going to do that?
Yeah. they
had those old little 8mm, those were rickety and those weren't very good. But these were pretty darn good. And it's great. And I've got June Foray on there, and Walker Edmiston, and oh my gosh, Katie Lee, Will Ryan, a lot of people who are not with us.
Yeah,
Michael Rye. And
let's get that out there. Much like we put the video that Tad Stones, his home video of the Darkwing Duck recording session, it had Dan Castellaneta in there as well, and just so many people. Christine was in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. God
but Chris, let's ask one more question, and we will save the rest for a future Chippendale mailbag. We'll ask one more, and we'll wrap this guy up.
There we go.
Sounds good. A lot of these, just for the listeners out there, a lot of these questions have been answered either through our discussion on this deep dive here or in the commentary that we just did on Chippendale's Rescue Rangers pilot. So if we didn't call your name out on your question, be sure to listen because the question may have already been answered. Yes. But here's one more from Tom Brooks, author, on Instagram. What was it like working with Tress MacNeille?
Oh, it was great. She's, to this day, a good friend of mine. We 2 weeks ago, we had lunch at a Comic-Con convention. And, she is, we have joked back and forth because we both started our careers at this place called The Voicecaster in Burbank, and it's still there. And she kind of was working there, and she was a burgeoning actress. She had made her demo tape, and she was shopping around. And I had made my first demo tape, and I was shopping it around. And I'd go over there, and she'd be one of the people who would read you on the spot. Okay, here, this is for Ace Hardware commercial, Grimy Man #2, Jim Cummings and Corey Burton are auditioning, blah, blah, blah. And then you would do the audition, and then they would cut it together and see if you got the job, and they'd call your agent. And that's where I met Tress. She was on the other side of the booth of the glass, and soon to be, and then she would come back and forth and do her auditions, and she was getting gigs, and next thing she couldn't work there because she was working too much. And so it was very cool, and to this day, she's one of my best buddies in the business, sweet as she can be, smart as a whip, funny as hell. Oh my gosh.
She's not necessarily a household name. She's in the voice acting community. She's not necessarily a household name, but she is one of the all-time greats.
Oh, without question. She's all over The Simpsons.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, she's like their good luck charm.
Yeah.
So
if they need sort of like just a character just to stand out for one episode, just get Tress. Tress is just like the format.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember back in the day she made a parody of Tony Basil's "Oh Mickey, you're so fine, you play bongos you're so fine, you blow my mind." Well, Weird Al Yankovic did one, "Oh Ricky," and it was Ricky Ricardo and Lucille Ball, and she played Lucille Ball in the black and white video. Yeah, and it was hysterical. "Oh Ricky, you're so fine, you play bongos all the time. Hey Ricky, hey," and it was off of Tony Basil's "Hey Mickey."
She is energetic in real life as she comes across, because she comes across as just like this giant ball of energy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she sure is. Yeah, and smart as she could be.
Yeah.
Which is awesome all by itself.
Well, we will 100% have to get Tress on the podcast at some point.
Yes, what you said. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's game.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's make that happen.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, this has been fun, gentlemen. Going back and revisiting Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, one of my favorite Disney afternoon shows. I'm sure one of yours as well, Chris.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah, don't forget, guys, you can catch our commentary track. Cummings Commentaries is a series we do on the Toon'd Patreon channel. You can find a link for that in the description of this pod, patreon.com/Jim Cummings Podcast, where Jim, Chris, and myself, we go back and revisit classic episodes of those Disney afternoon shows, and Jim even plays the characters. So you get to see the characters or hear the characters doing commentaries as well. It's a really, really good time, a hell of a good time. But Jim, who is your favorite voice to do on Chip 'n Dales? Before we go, who's your favorite voice to do on Chip 'n Dales? Do you think it's Monterey Jack or Fat Cat?
Probably Fat Cat.
Yeah. You're a bad guy.
He was bad guys always have fun.
There's actually one more question I want to ask you. So you played another bad guy. You mentioned him earlier, Jolly Roger, the pirate mouse, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You listen to that. He's a very cliche pirate voice. Because you do Don Carnage and you do Hondo and you really put a spin on it. But was there a reason you went with like the cliche pirate voice for that one?
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted him to sound like every pirate that anybody ever heard in the whole life. And they were always sort of half Cockney, half, British, definitely. And because that was like the classic pirate to me.
Yeah.
Even Captain Hook sounded British to me at the time, and it was Hans Conried, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
But, you can't go wrong with a British Cockney pirate.
But if you want to hear Jim voicing Jolly Rogers, that's episode 1 on Disney Plus. So the episode we do a commentary of, the actual pilot, was episode 2 on Disney Plus. It's all very confusing with the production orders and everything, but episode 2 is the one we do the commentary on. And also, please rate and review us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this show. Chuck us 5 stars and leave us a few kind words. We do read all of your reviews, and the more ratings and reviews we get, the more we boost up that algorithm, the more people discover the show. But once again, guys, hope you've enjoyed our deep dive on Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jim.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me out to play.
And we'll catch you all in the next episode of Tuned In with Jim Cummings.